Don't you remember me, cowboy? The Apache beauty who said she was his childhood love. Wild West Tom rode slowly into the small frontier town, the wheels of his wagon kicking up small clouds of dust behind him. The late afternoon sun burned orange across the wooden rooftops of the town, casting long shadows over the boardwalks and the dusty street. This town was different from the ones Tom had known before. It had a quiet, settled feeling, with a few merchants tending their shops and a couple of children running barefoot near the stable where Tom had parked his horse. The air smelled faintly of leather, hay, and smoke from chimneys. Tom liked the smell. It reminded him of home, or at least of the home he had tried to build for himself in this harsh, unforgiving land. He tied his horse to a post outside the stable, brushing the sweat from the animal's coat. Tom was a tall, broad-shouldered man with sun-darkened skin and calloused hands that showed years of work with horses and cattle. Though he was in his late 20s, his eyes held a careful calm, a quiet watchfulness that came from surviving the frontier. Life had been harsh, and yet he had always found small ways to make it meaningful, helping neighbors, repairing fences, riding into the hills to find lost cattle. He had grown used to solitude, the wide open plains offering company of a different kind, wind, sky, and the steady rhythm of his own work. As he walked toward the stable door, Tom noticed movement out of the corner of his eye. A woman was standing across the street, near the general store. She was dressed simply, in a long skirt and a plain blouse, but there was a strength in the way she stood, and her dark hair fell straight and glossy down her back. Tom slowed his step, squinting against the sunlight. Something about her felt familiar, though he could not place it. She was watching him, waiting, as though she had been expecting him to arrive. When she stepped closer, her voice was soft but clear. "Don't you remember me?" she asked. The words floated across the dusty street and hit him like a sudden wind. Tom stopped, his heart skipping a beat. He blinked, trying to focus, trying to recall a face he had not seen for years. I'm sorry," he said slowly, unsure of what he should say. "Do I know you?" The woman's eyes were steady, almost pleading. "Tom?" she said, as though that name would unlock the memory she carried. She took another step closer, and then she added, "It's me, Ayana, from when we were children. Don't you remember?" Tom's mind raced. The name sounded vaguely familiar, but he could not place it. He had grown up on the edge of the Apache reservation for a few years as a boy, living with his parents when the frontier was still mostly open prairie. He had played by the river, climbed the trees, and spent afternoons with children of the Apache community who had welcomed him into their small world. And now, after so many years, a single name brought back the faintest memories of laughter, chasing each other along the riverbank, and quiet afternoons where the sun had seemed endless. Ayana," he murmured, tasting the name like it was both strange and familiar. "I remember, I think. But it's been so long." Her smile was small but bright, like a spark of sunlight breaking through a cloud. "I remember you," she said. "I never forgot you. You were always my friend, Tom." There was something in her voice that made him stop and really look at her, to see her not just as a stranger, but as someone who had been part of his life in a time that now felt like another world. They stood silently for a few moments, the bustle of the town moving around them. But for both of them, it felt as though the world had shrunk to just this one quiet street and two people who had found each other after years apart. Tom noticed the way her eyes held a mixture of hope and uncertainty. She was beautiful, yes, but it was more than that. There was a strength there, a calm determination that reminded him of the girls he had known in his youth who could run as fast as the boys and climb the highest trees without fear. Tom cleared his throat. "It's been a long time," he said. "You look different, but I think I remember some things. Maybe the river, the cottonwood trees." Ayana nodded eagerly. "Yes, the river! And the tree with the branch that bent down low. Remember how we used to climb it and jump into the water?" She laughed softly, and Tom could hear the memory in her voice, a sound that brought warmth to his chest. Slowly, A flicker of those old memories returned. The cool water, the feel of summer sun on their faces, the excitement of discovery and freedom. For a moment, he felt like a boy again, running barefoot through the grass with Ayana by his side.
I think I remember, he said finally. You always had a way of climbing higher than me.
I never could reach the top. She laughed, the sound ringing across the street. And you always tried.
I remember that. You never gave up, even when you were tired.
Tom smiled, feeling a strange mixture of nostalgia and curiosity. He wanted to know more, to understand what had become of her, how she had grown, and what she had seen in the years since they had last met. "Where have you been all these years?" he asked gently. Ayana's expression grew serious. "I stayed near the reservation at first, but after my parents passed, I moved closer to towns like this. I learned many things about the world, about myself. I wanted to see you again to tell you that I never forgot my friend from long ago." Tom felt a lump in his throat. He had not expected this reunion, not after all these years. The frontier had taught him to be cautious, to measure every step, every word. Yet, here was someone who remembered him as he had once been, someone who had kept a place for him in her life even as time moved forward. "Would you, want to walk?" he asked, gesturing toward the dusty street. "There's a spot by the river. I think you might remember it." Ayana nodded, and together they walked slowly toward the river that ran near the edge of town. The journey was quiet at first, filled with small observations, the way the sun hit the wooden buildings, the sound of children laughing, the scent of hay and leather. But gradually, words began to flow, stories spilling out about life since they had last met. Ayana spoke of her family, of the challenges they had faced, of the changes that had swept through her world. Tom listened, learning not just about her experiences, but also about the strength it took to survive and adapt in a land that could be harsh and unforgiving. He felt admiration for her, a deep respect that grew with every word she spoke. And as the river came into view, wide and glimmering in the late afternoon sun, a sense of familiarity washed over him. Here was the place where they had once played, laughed, and dreamed as children. The water sparkled in a way that brought back memories he had long forgotten. The sound of the river over the stones, the smell of wet grass and earth, the feeling of freedom. Ayana paused at the riverbank, turning to look at him with a smile.
"It hasn't changed much," she said softly, "except maybe the trees."
"They've grown taller." Tom nodded, feeling a mix of awe and nostalgia. Some things feel the same even after all these years," he said. He watched her face, noticing the way the light caught her eyes, the gentle curve of her smile, the way she carried herself with quiet confidence. He realized that the girl he had known long ago had grown into a remarkable woman, and yet there was still a piece of that childhood friend here, in her laughter, her stories, and the way she remembered him. For a long while they simply stood there, looking at the river, sharing memories and laughter. Tom felt a sense of connection he had not felt in years. The world was wide, and life was unpredictable, but in this moment it felt as though time had folded back on itself, bringing together two people who had once shared the simple joys of childhood and were now discovering the possibility of friendship renewed. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Tom felt a quiet excitement. He did not know what the future held, but he knew that this meeting was important. It was more than chance. It was a reminder of the people we leave behind, the memories we carry, and the unexpected ways life can bring them back into our paths. Ayana smiled again, her voice soft but certain. "I am glad I found you, Tom. I always hoped I would." Tom looked at her, feeling a warmth he had not realized he had missed. "And I am glad you found me," he replied. I want to remember it all again. Tell me everything. Tell me your story." And so, as the river flowed quietly beside them, they began to talk, not just of the past, but of the present, of life's challenges and its little victories. And for the first time in a long time, Tom felt a sense of connection, a spark of something enduring, something worth holding on to in a world that could so easily take it all away. The town faded behind them, the noise of horses and carts becoming distant as they walked along the riverbank together. Two lives, separated by years and circumstance, were slowly coming back together, guided by memories, trust, and the quiet hope of friendship renewed. The next morning, Tom woke to the sound of horses neighing in the stable outside his small cabin. The early sun spilled golden light across the wooden floor, painting patterns through the window slats. He stretched, feeling the coolness of the morning air against his skin, and thought about yesterday. Ayanna. Her face, her smile, the way her voice had stirred memories he thought were long gone. He could still hear her laughter, and it made him smile despite himself. There was something about meeting her again that made everything seem lighter, even in a world that was often hard and unforgiving. After feeding his horse and brushing it down, Tom walked toward the town, hoping to find Ayanna. He didn't have to look far. She was already there, near the general store, speaking with a shopkeeper about supplies. When she noticed him, her face lit up. She waved, and Tom waved back, feeling a warmth in his chest that he hadn't felt in years. He approached her slowly, unsure of what to say first, yet certain he wanted to spend the day with her. "Good morning, Tom," she said, smiling. Her voice was gentle, but there was a spark of excitement in her eyes. "Did you sleep well?" "As well as anyone can in a wooden cabin near the stable," he replied with a small laugh. "And you?" "Better, now that I see you again," she said simply. Her words made him pause. There was a calm honesty in her expression, a sense that she meant exactly what she said. Tom found himself returning her smile, a quiet gratitude filling him. They decided to walk along the river, the place where their childhood memories were strongest. As they moved through the small streets of the town, the world seemed to come alive around them. Children ran past with baskets of apples, merchants called out their wares, and the wind carried the smells of fresh bread and hay. Yet Tom barely noticed any of it. His attention was fixed on Ayanna, on the way she moved and spoke, and on the memories she stirred within him. When they reached the river, the water was clear and fast-moving, glinting under the morning sun. Tom remembered the many afternoons he had spent here as a boy, running through the shallow water, skipping stones, and climbing the cottonwood trees that lined the bank. He watched as Ayanna knelt by the water, letting her fingers trail in the cool current. It was as though the years had rolled back, revealing the girl he had known, even as she had grown into a strong, capable woman. "Do you remember the tree that bent down over the river?" she asked, glancing at him. "The one we used to climb and jump from?" Tom's lips curved into a smile. "I do. You always got the highest, and I could never reach it." Ayanna laughed softly, the sound carrying across the river. "And you never gave up." "I remember that. You always tried, no matter what." For a long while they simply walked along the river bank talking about memories from the past. Ayanna shared stories about her family, her parents, and her younger brothers and sisters. She spoke of quiet evenings by the fire, of teaching the younger children to read, and of gathering herbs and wild fruits from the land. Tom listened carefully, fascinated by the glimpses of life she had lived, a life so different from his own, yet full of courage and resilience. "I often thought about those days," she said quietly. "I wondered if you ever remembered me, or if I was just a small part of your childhood that faded away." Tom felt a pang in his chest.
"I remember, just not clearly."
"But now, seeing you again, it all comes back. I remember the laughter, the games, the river, the trees, and I remember a friend who was brave and kind." Her eyes softened, and she reached out to touch his arm lightly. "It feels strange, doesn't it? How time can stretch so long, and yet some things stay the same."
"Yes," Tom agreed.
"Some things stay with you, even if you don't see them every day. Some memories, some people, they are never gone." They walked further down the river, stepping over rocks and patches of tall grass. The sound of water rushing over stones filled the quiet spaces between their words. Tom noticed how the sun glinted off Ayanna's hair, how her eyes seemed to catch every detail around her. how she moved with a calm confidence that came from years of surviving in a world that could be harsh. He felt a deep respect for her, a sense that she had grown into someone remarkable, someone who could face the challenges of life with courage and grace.
Ayana stopped at a bend in the river and pointed to a small clearing where the grass grew tall and wildflowers bloomed in bright colors.
"Do you remember this spot?" she asked. "We used to come here sometimes when the river was low. We would lie in the grass and watch the clouds pass by." Tom knelt in the grass, feeling the earth beneath him, the smell of the river, and the quiet beauty of the place. "I do," he said. "I remember lying here, watching the clouds. You always said one looked like a horse, and the next day another looked like a bird." Ayana laughed, a light musical sound that made Tom feel as though the years had melted away. "And you always argued about what it really looked like. You had to be right about everything even then." He smiled. "I did, didn't I? Some things never change." For the next few hours they walked, talked, and shared stories. Ayana told him about the hardships her family faced after he had left, the loss of land, the changing ways of the world, and the struggle to preserve their traditions. She spoke with pride and dignity, never asking for sympathy, only to share the truth of her experiences. Tom listened with care, feeling a mix of sorrow and admiration. He realized that the world had not been easy for her, yet she had faced it with courage. "I had to grow up quickly," she said, "but I never forgot the simple joys, the laughter, and the friendships that made life beautiful." Tom nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. "I understand. Life has a way of moving fast, and sometimes we lose touch with the things that matter most. But seeing you again, it reminds me of what's truly important." They paused near a cluster of trees, the branches swaying gently in the breeze. Tom could feel the warmth of the sun on his back, the sound of the river in his ears, and the presence of Ayana beside him. It was a quiet, perfect moment, the kind of moment that made the world feel both vast and small at the same time. Ayana looked at him seriously. "Do you ever think about what might have been? About the choices we made, the paths we took?"
Tom thought for a moment. "Sometimes," he admitted.
"But I also think about the people we meet along the way, and how they shape us even if we don't realize it at the time."
"You shaped me, Ayana."
"You were a part of my life I didn't know I would miss until now." She smiled softly, her eyes shining with emotion. "And you shaped me too. I never forgot the kindness you showed, the friendship you gave."
It meant more than you will ever know. The conversation deepened their connection.
They moved beyond the playful memories of childhood into the real experiences of their lives, sharing the struggles, the joys, and the lessons they had learned. Tom spoke of his years working the ranch, of lonely nights under the stars, of moments of doubt and moments of pride. Ayana spoke of her family, her efforts to keep traditions alive, and the challenges of navigating a world that was often unkind to those who were different. Despite the differences in their experiences, they found common ground in their shared humanity. The desire for connection, the longing for understanding, and the need for friendship that could withstand the passage of time. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, painting the river in shades of gold and orange, they found a fallen log and sat together, watching the water flow by. Tom felt a sense of peace he had not known in years, a sense that he had rediscovered something valuable. Ayana's presence was a reminder that life could still hold wonder, even in a world full of hardship. "I'm glad I found you again," she said quietly. "I always hoped I would."
"And I'm glad you found me," Tom replied. "I want to remember all of it. Every story, every moment we shared."
"I don't want to let these memories fade again." For a long time they sat there, watching the river, talking in quiet tones, and simply enjoying each other's company. It was a day of reconnection, of rediscovery, and of the beginning of something that neither of them fully understood yet, but both felt deeply. As the sky darkened, they stood and began the walk back toward town, the river's gentle rush accompanying them like a song. The world of the frontier continued around them, with its dust, its heat, and its challenges. But for Tom and Ayana, it was also a world of possibility. They had rediscovered a bond that had survived the years, a friendship that could now grow into something stronger, something enduring. And in the quiet of that Wild West afternoon, two people who had been separated by time and circumstance took the first steps toward a new chapter in their lives, carrying with them the memories of a past that would never be forgotten. The next few days passed quickly. Tom and Ayanna spent most of their time together walking along the river, visiting the town and sharing stories about the years that had passed since they were children. With every conversation, Tom felt himself growing closer to Ayanna, not just because of the memories they shared, but because of the strength, intelligence, and kindness she had shown throughout her life. He admired the way she carried herself, how she spoke with thoughtfulness, and how she never asked for pity, even when recounting difficult times. One morning they decided to visit the outskirts of town, where Ayanna's family had once lived. Tom had not been there since he was a boy, and he was curious to see what had become of the place.
Ayanna guided him carefully, pointing out familiar landmarks and sharing stories of her parents and siblings.
The land was both beautiful and wild, with tall grass, scattered trees, and the distant sound of cattle. "This used to be our small garden," Ayanna said, pointing to a patch of earth near a grove of trees. "We grew corn and beans here. My father taught me how to plant and care for it. I can still remember his hands, strong and patient." She paused, looking out over the land. After he passed, it was hard. Some of it was taken by settlers, some of it we had to leave behind. But we tried to keep the traditions alive. Tom felt a sharp pang in his chest. He had left this place as a boy, thinking he would return one day, but he had never come back. Seeing it now and hearing Ayanna's words, he felt a mixture of guilt and admiration. She had endured so much, yet she stood tall, proud of her family and her heritage. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. I never realized how hard it must have been." Ayanna shook her head. "Don't be sorry for that. You were just a child yourself. Life is what it is, and we do what we can. But it means a lot that you want to understand." As they walked back toward town, Tom noticed that the streets felt different. There was a tension in the air, a wariness among the townspeople. Some looked at Ayanna with suspicion, their eyes narrowing as she passed. Tom could feel the subtle stares and whispers, the kind that reminded him how different the world could be for someone who did not fit the usual pattern. He reached out and touched her arm lightly. "Don't let them bother you," he said. "They don't know you, and they don't know me. We can't control what they think, but we can control how we act." Ayanna smiled faintly, though her eyes showed a hint of sadness.
"I'm used to it. Some people never understand."
"But that's okay. I know who I am, and that's enough." The next day, Tom invited Ayanna to a small ranch on the edge of town. It was modest but functional, with a few horses, a small barn, and a patch of land for growing vegetables. He wanted to show her his life, and perhaps, he hoped, find ways to share it with her. As they walked among the horses, Ayanna's eyes sparkled with curiosity. "You've done well for yourself," she said. "It's not easy, managing so many animals and taking care of the land." Tom shrugged. "It's work, hard work. But it's honest work, and it keeps me going. It gives me purpose."
Ayanna nodded, her gaze thoughtful. "I understand. I've had my own purpose, in a way."
Taking care of family, keeping traditions alive, sometimes it feels like the hardest work in the world. Tom reached for a bale of hay, showing her how he loaded it into the barn. She followed, careful and capable, her movements precise. He noticed the strength in her hands, the confidence in her posture, and the focus in her eyes. She was not just a memory of his childhood. She was a real, strong woman who could face the challenges of life head on. As they worked together, they talked about their dreams, small and big. Tom shared his hope of expanding the ranch, of creating a small but safe life in a world that often seemed uncertain. Ayanna spoke of her desire to preserve her culture, to teach younger generations the lessons of her ancestors, and to keep the stories alive. Their dreams were different, but they found a quiet harmony in the way they spoke, a sense that their lives could somehow intertwine without losing their individuality. But not all was peaceful in the town. That evening, as they returned from the ranch, a group of men gathered near the saloon, speaking in low, harsh tones. Tom recognized some of them as settlers who had a reputation for being quick to judge and even quicker to act against those who were different. As he and Ayanna walked past, one of the men stepped forward. "Well, well," the man said, his voice rough. "Look who's spending time with that Apache woman. You sure about that, cowboy?" Tom stopped, his jaw tightening. He looked at the man steadily, refusing to show fear. "We're just friends," he said calmly. "Nothing more. We have a right to walk where we choose." The man sneered. "Friends, huh? Maybe she's got other plans. You should be careful." Ayanna stood tall beside Tom, her eyes meeting his with quiet reassurance. "It's not your business," she said firmly. "We are not harming anyone." The man gave a derisive laugh and walked away with his companions, muttering under his breath. Tom felt a surge of protectiveness, a desire to shield her from the prejudice that seemed so common in the town. Yet he also felt respect for her courage, for the way she faced them without fear, standing her ground in a world that often demanded submission. Later that night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Tom and Ayanna sat near the fire outside his cabin. The stars were beginning to appear, tiny points of light against the deepening blue sky. They spoke quietly, reflecting on the day and the challenges they had faced. "You handled that well," Tom said. "You didn't back down, even when they tried to intimidate you." Ayanna smiled faintly. "I have learned to be careful, but not to hide. Life is difficult enough without pretending to be someone you're not." "And you didn't let fear control you either." Tom nodded. "It's not easy, standing up to people like that. But seeing you today, it reminded me why it's worth it. Some things are worth defending no matter the cost." The conversation turned to their childhood again, and Ayanna shared stories that Tom had never known. She told him about her younger siblings, about her parents' lessons, and about the small moments of joy that had made life bearable during hard times. Tom listened intently, feeling a deeper connection to her than ever before. "You know," she said softly, "I never expected to see you again. Life has a way of surprising us, but I'm glad it did. You remind me of who I was and who I wanted to be." Tom felt a lump in his throat. "And you remind me of the best parts of childhood I had forgotten. The laughter, the friendship, the feeling that someone believed in me. I'm grateful for that." For the next few days, they continued to spend time together, navigating the town and the ranch, learning about each other's worlds, and building a bond that was growing stronger with every shared story and experience. They discovered that even in a place filled with challenges, prejudice, suspicion, and the harsh realities of frontier life, they could find moments of joy, understanding, and companionship. One afternoon, as they worked on the ranch together, Ayanna suddenly stopped and looked at Tom seriously. "There's something I haven't told you," she said. "Something important about my family, and about why I moved closer to town." Tom paused, wiping sweat from his brow. "What is it?" he asked gently. "You can tell me anything?" She took a deep breath. "After my parents passed, some of our land was claimed by settlers. We had to move, to adapt, and to find ways to survive. It wasn't easy. I learned a lot about the world, some of it harsh, some of it kind. And I wanted to see you again, to reconnect with someone who was once part of my life. But I also wanted to make sure I could stand on my own before reaching out." Tom felt a wave of admiration for her. "You've done more than I could have imagined. You faced challenges that would have broken many people, and yet you're still here, standing strong. I'm proud of you, Ayanna. Truly proud." She smiled, a mixture of relief and happiness. "Thank you, Tom. That means a lot." As the sun set, casting long shadows over the ranch and the town beyond, Tom realized that life was full of unexpected meetings and challenges. Some brought fear, others brought joy. Some reminded him of the past, while others showed him the potential for the future. And in all of it, Ayanna had become a presence he could not ignore. A friend, a companion, and perhaps something more. That night, as he lay in his cabin, Tom thought about the days ahead. There would be challenges, certainly. The town's prejudice, the dangers of the frontier, and the uncertainties of life would not disappear. But for the first time in a long time, he felt ready to face them. Not alone, but with someone who shared his past, his memories, and his hopes for the future. The morning air was sharp and cool as Tom saddled his horse, preparing to ride out to check the cattle grazing on the far side of the plains. The land stretched endlessly, golden with tall grasses swaying in the breeze. Ayana approached quietly, her own horse tied nearby, a small bundle of supplies in her hand. He had insisted on joining him. Tom hesitated at first, knowing the open plains could be dangerous. But when he looked at her determined expression, he realized she was capable and brave. "Are you sure?" he asked, adjusting the saddle straps. "It's a long ride, and we don't know what we might encounter." Ayana smiled faintly. "I've faced more than a long ride. And besides," she added, glancing toward the open plains, "I trust you." Tom felt a warmth in his chest at her words. "All right," he said finally. "Then let's go together." They rode side by side, the horses' hooves drumming softly against the dry earth. The plains were wide and beautiful, but also wild, full of hidden dangers. The wind carried the distant calls of birds, the rustle of small animals in the grass, and the faint scent of the river flowing miles away. It was a world that demanded alertness, where a misstep could have serious consequences. As they rode, Tom spoke about the land, the cattle, and the work that kept him busy each day. Ayana listened, asking questions about the different breeds of horses, the challenges of keeping them healthy, and the responsibilities of a rancher. Her curiosity and intelligence impressed Tom. She was not only knowledgeable, but also practical, ready to face problems calmly and thoughtfully. Hours passed, and the sun climbed higher, turning the plains golden and bright. The cattle were grazing peacefully, but Tom noticed some tracks near the edge of the herd, tracks that were not made by animals. He frowned, studying the ground. "What is it?" Ayana asked, noticing his concern. "Tracks," Tom said quietly. "Human tracks. Fresh ones. Someone's been near the cattle." Ayana leaned forward, her eyes scanning the land. "Do you think they mean harm?" Tom shrugged, though his jaw tightened. "Hard to say. Could be settlers, or outlaws looking for trouble. We need to be careful." They continued their work, moving quietly, checking the fences and the boundaries of the land. The sense of danger was subtle at first, a whisper in the wind, but it grew as the day wore on. Tom had faced many challenges in his life, but there was something different about this, an uncertainty that demanded attention and preparation. By late afternoon, the shadows grew long across the plains. Tom and Ayana had finished their work and were heading back toward the river when they heard the distant sound of shouting. Tom's hand went instinctively to the strap of his rifle, and Ayana's eyes narrowed as she scanned the horizon. "Trouble," Tom muttered. "Someone's approaching. Fast."
Ayana nodded. "We should find cover."
Quickly. They led the horses toward a small grove of trees near a bend in the river, the branches providing some concealment. From their hiding spot, they could see a group of men on horseback riding swiftly across the plains. Their faces were hidden by scarves, but their intent was clear. They were moving toward the herd, and the shouting suggested they were not friendly. Tom's heart pounded. He had faced outlaws before, but the presence of Ayana made him feel a stronger need to protect her. He motioned for her to stay low behind a tree while he tried to assess the situation. "They're trying to steal the cattle," he whispered. "We have to stop them." Ayana's eyes flashed with determination. "Then let's do it," she said calmly. "Together." Tom nodded, feeling a surge of admiration and trust. They moved carefully, keeping the trees between themselves and the approaching men. When the outlaws were close enough, Tom gave a quiet signal, and they both stepped out to confront them. "Hey!" Tom shouted, raising his voice over the wind. "Stop right there!" The outlaws hesitated, surprised by the sudden challenge. Ayana stepped forward beside Tom, her presence firm and confident. The sight of the two of them, standing together, seemed to make the men think twice. "Back off," Tom warned.
These cattle aren't yours." One of the outlaws laughed harshly. "And who are you to stop us, cowboy?" he sneered. "Just a man and a girl?" Ayana's voice was steady and clear. "We are enough to protect what is ours. Leave now, or you will regret it." The men exchanged glances, their confidence wavering. Tom and Ayana moved closer to the horses, ready to defend the herd. Then, in a sudden burst of courage, Ayana darted toward the nearest man, swinging a rope she had brought with her. The man tried to dodge, but the rope caught his wrist, causing him to stumble. Tom quickly aimed his rifle, though he did not want to shoot. His presence and her clever maneuver had unsettled the outlaws enough that they hesitated. Seeing their advantage lost, the outlaws decided it was not worth the fight. They turned their horses and galloped back across the plains, leaving the cattle and the two friends unharmed. Tom exhaled, lowering his rifle, and turned to Ayana. "You were incredible," he said, his voice filled with amazement. "I didn't expect that. You saved us." Ayana smiled, though there was a hint of exhaustion in her eyes. "We saved each other. That's what matters." Tom felt a deep respect and gratitude for her courage. "I've never met anyone like you," he admitted. "Strong, brave, clever, and fearless." She laughed softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You're not so bad yourself, cowboy. But I think we make a good team." They stayed by the river for a while, letting the adrenaline fade, and listening to the gentle rush of water over stones. The experience had been frightening, but it had also brought them closer together. They had faced danger and survived, relying on trust, courage, and quick thinking. As the sun began to set, painting the river and the plains in shades of gold and orange, they rode back toward town. Tom felt a renewed sense of purpose, not just in protecting his land, but in the companionship he had found with Ayana. She was no longer just a memory of his childhood. She was a partner, someone he could rely on, and someone who relied on him. The town looked peaceful as they returned, but Tom knew the world beyond it could be unpredictable. The plains were wide, and danger could appear at any time. Yet, after the events of the day, he felt more prepared than ever. With Ayana by his side, he knew they could face whatever came next. That evening, they sat outside Tom's cabin, the stars appearing one by one in the clear night sky. A gentle breeze rustled the trees, and the distant call of an owl added a calm rhythm to the night. They spoke quietly about the day, reliving the moments of tension and the clever ways they had managed to protect the cattle.
"You know," Ayana said, her voice soft, "I think I've always known I could face challenges, but today
I realized I'm stronger when I'm not alone." Tom nodded, feeling the truth of her words. "We're stronger together," he said. "Life is unpredictable, and the frontier is dangerous, but we can handle it. We have each other." Ayana looked at him, her eyes reflecting the light of the stars. "I'm glad I found you again," she whispered. "I never thought I'd have this chance to reconnect, to face the world with someone I trust." Tom felt a warmth spread through his chest. "And I'm glad you found me. You remind me of the best parts of life: courage, friendship, and hope. No matter what comes, I'm grateful for that." For the rest of the night they shared stories, dreams, and quiet laughter. The events of the day had tested their courage, but it had also strengthened their bond. They knew that the frontier would continue to bring challenges, storms, conflicts, and uncertainty, but they also knew that they could face them together. As the fire burned low and the stars shone brightly overhead, Tom felt a sense of peace and determination. The danger they had faced had shown him the value of trust, partnership, and bravery. Ayana had proven herself not just as a friend from the past, but as someone who could stand beside him in the present and future. And in that quiet moment, with the plains stretching endlessly around them and the river flowing gently nearby, Tom realized that some bonds were stronger than time, stronger than fear, and stronger than the harshest challenges the world could throw their way. They had faced danger together and they had survived. More importantly, they had grown closer, building trust and understanding that would carry them through whatever the frontier had in store next.
The morning sun broke over the horizon, casting long golden rays across the town and the wide plains beyond. Tom stood outside his cabin, brushing the dust from his clothes, and listened to the quiet hum of the frontier waking up. Birds chirped in the distance, and the soft murmur of the river reminded him of the days spent reconnecting with Ayana. Today felt different. There was a calm, almost gentle sense of anticipation in the air. Something in his heart told him that the path he and Ayana were walking together was reaching a turning point. Ayana arrived shortly after sunrise, her horse tied to the post near the stable. Her dark hair glistened in the morning light, and her eyes sparkled with determination. She carried a small basket of bread and fresh fruit, smiling at Tom as she approached. "Good morning," she said, her voice warm and soft. "Are you ready for today?" Tom nodded, feeling a quiet excitement. "I am," he replied. "I think today is about more than just the ranch or the river. It's about figuring out what comes next, together." Ayana's eyes softened. "I've been thinking about that too," she said. "There are so many things we could do, and I want to make sure we do them the right way together, with respect for each other and for the land and for the people around us." Tom smiled, appreciating her thoughtful nature. "Then let's start by checking on the town. I think it's time we let people see what kind of team we are, and maybe earn a little trust along the way." They walked into the town together, a quiet but firm presence that drew the attention of the townspeople. Some watched with curiosity, others with suspicion, but none could deny the determination in their steps or the confidence in the way they carried themselves. As they passed the general store, an elderly merchant approached them. "Tom, Ayana," he said, nodding respectfully. "I saw what happened the other day with the cattle. You both handled it well. I think people are starting to understand that you're not to be underestimated." Ayana nodded politely. "Thank you," she said. "We only want to live in peace and fairness. That's all." The merchant smiled. "Then maybe it's time the town sees the best of both of you, not just as a cowboy or an Apache woman, but as people who care for this land and the community." Tom and Ayana continued their walk, stopping to greet neighbors and friends they had made over the past few days. Each encounter was small but meaningful, a chance to show that courage, honesty, and kindness were what mattered, not prejudice or past assumptions. Slowly the town's mood began to shift, and even those who had been doubtful could not ignore the quiet strength of the pair. By midday they returned to the ranch, where the sun burned hot over the fields and the cattle grazed peacefully. Tom and Ayana worked side by side, repairing fences, moving cattle, and preparing food. As they labored together, they spoke about the future, what they hoped for, what they feared, and the ways they could build a life that honored both their pasts and the world around them. "I've been thinking," Ayana said, pausing as she adjusted a post in the fence. "We could expand the garden near the river, grow more crops, maybe even teach some of the children in town about it. It would help the community and also connect people with the land." Tom nodded, impressed by her vision. "That's a good idea. And maybe we could start training some of the younger ranch hands to handle the cattle more safely. If they learn from both of us, it will be better for everyone." They worked quietly for a while, the rhythm of the labor bringing a sense of peace. The sound of hooves, the lowing of cattle, and the gentle breeze made the world feel balanced and calm. Tom realized that life on the frontier, though full of challenges, could also bring moments of harmony and hope, especially when shared with someone he trusted and admired. As the afternoon approached, they decided to take a break by the river. The water sparkled under the sun, reflecting the bright blue sky and the tall trees along the bank. Tom and Ayana sat together, their legs dangling over the edge of a small rock outcrop, and shared a simple meal of bread, cheese, and fruit. "You know," Tom said, breaking the comfortable silence, "I never thought I would find a friend from my childhood again. But now I realize that life sometimes gives us second chances. And maybe those chances are more important than the first ones." Ayana smiled, her eyes reflecting the sunlight on the water. "I know what you mean. I always hoped I would see you again, to reconnect with someone who remembered the past the same way I did. And now that we have, I don't want to lose it again." Tom reached over and touched her hand gently. "We won't. Whatever comes, we face it together. That's what matters. The moment was quiet but powerful, a bridge between their past and their future. Both had lived through hardships, faced danger, and experienced the uncertainties of life on the frontier. Yet here they were, side by side, building trust, friendship, and a sense of hope that had been missing for years. As the sun began to set, painting the sky with shades of pink, orange, and gold, Tom and Ayanna returned to town. The townspeople had gathered in the main street for the evening, a casual crowd of families, merchants, and travelers. There was a subtle energy in the air, a sense that something was different. People watched as Tom and Ayanna walked together, their presence calm and assured. An older man stepped forward from the crowd. "I saw what you both did the other day with the cattle," he said, "and I've seen how you live, work, and care for this land. You've shown courage, honesty, and respect."
I think it's time we welcome both of you fully into this community."
The crowd murmured in agreement, some nodding, others smiling. Ayanna's eyes met Tom's, and they shared a quiet, unspoken understanding. This was more than just acceptance. It was recognition of their strength, their values, and their partnership. Tom stepped forward, speaking to the crowd. "We're grateful for your words. We only want to live honestly, work hard, and contribute to this town. Ayanna and we care about this land, this community, and the people in it. That's all." The crowd responded with a mix of nods, smiles, and gentle applause. For the first time in years, both Tom and Ayanna felt a sense of belonging, not just to each other, but to the community around them. After the crowd dispersed, Tom and Ayanna walked toward the river once more. The night was calm, with stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. The river reflected the light, shimmering gently as the wind whispered through the trees.
"I think we can make this work," Tom said softly. "A life together, here on the land, connected to the town, the river, and each other.
We faced challenges, but we've come through them stronger." Ayanna nodded, her expression calm and happy.
"Yes."
"And we've learned a lot about trust, courage, and the value of standing together. I feel ready for whatever comes next, as long as we face it together." They sat by the river until the late hours of the night, speaking quietly about their dreams, their plans, and their hopes for the future. They talked about expanding the ranch, improving the land, teaching the younger generation, and preserving Ayanna's family traditions. Each conversation strengthened their connection and solidified their shared vision for life. Days turned into weeks, and the frontier settled into a comfortable rhythm. Tom and Ayanna worked the ranch together, explored the river, and built a small but strong garden. The townspeople grew accustomed to their presence, respecting them not just for their skills and courage, but for the kindness and honesty they showed in every action. The bond between Tom and Ayanna continued to grow, no longer defined solely by childhood memories, but by shared experiences, trust, and a deep, abiding friendship that hinted at something more. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned golden, Tom and Ayanna stood on a small hill overlooking the river and the town. The plains stretched endlessly before them, bathed in soft, warm light. Tom turned to Ayanna, a gentle smile on his face. "Whatever happens," he said, "we'll face it together. The frontier, the challenges, the unknown. We can handle it."
Ayanna reached for his hand, squeezing it gently. "Yes," she said.
"Together. And that makes all the difference." They watched the sun set in silence, feeling a sense of peace and hope. The past, with its memories and challenges, had brought them here. The future, uncertain but full of possibility, stretched before them like the wide-open plains. And in the quiet beauty of that Wild West evening, Tom and Ayanna knew they had found something rare and enduring, a bond of trust, friendship, and hope that would carry them forward, no matter what life might bring. As the stars began to appear, twinkling above the river and the plains, they stood together side by side, ready to face the world. The frontier was still wild and unpredictable, but for the first time in a long time, both of them felt truly at home, in each other, in the land, and in the life they had begun to build together.